Hello and welcome to the Badger Politic. I'm Scott Stearns.
Yes, good evening. Paul Sickle here.
How are you doing, Paul?
Okay, a little subdued.
Subdued?
Yeah, well, it's been another kind of rough week, honestly, for everybody. You know, when you look at, especially when you look at the politics, we got the president coming in.
We do.
Tomorrow.
He'll be
staying
here.
At the Pfister.
Yep.
It's time for another White House insanity check.
White House insanity check.
White House insanity check. Now, first of all, you know that the Pfister apparently has some ghosts that bother baseball players.
They tend to only bother baseball players for the most part, though.
Well, maybe this time Trump can see the ghosts of democracy past and and be unsettled.
The ghost of Abe Lincoln or Teddy Roosevelt.
Right. So what is he here for?
So he's here to get some pretty pictures in the paper because of the Foxconn groundbreaking.
Okay.
So he's here for that. However,
that might look better than separating children from their families.
Yeah, that'll probably
like children the age of our kids, which is
yes.
Almost 1. Yours is almost 3 and 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's not the only reason he's here. He is here to raise money for Wisconsin Republicans.
There's another reason.
Yeah.
So not just to avoid the bad headlines and celebrate business expansion in Wisconsin.
You didn't think he was coming here just, to boost business.
Do you think he's here to explain the potential loss of jobs to Harley employees?
Well, I'm sure that will be a question.
You know who's not doing that right now?
Who?
Our governor.
Our governor, Scott Walker? He's not calling out Trump for Harley Davidson announcing that they're going to move jobs overseas for the bikes that they sell overseas?
He refuses to specifically attack Trump.
Shocking.
And then he's going to raise $500,000 or something from Trump for what probably, at least on paper, looks like Walker's toughest re-election fight yet.
Yeah. So he's not calling out Trump for the tariffs and the trade war that's ensuing and the job loss that will potentially happen here in Milwaukee.
Yeah, nothing seems amiss from that. Right. And, I've had mixed feelings about tariffs and whatnot, but I will say this. I think that Walker, who doesn't seem to have mixed feelings about Trump, and is more than happy. Certainly doesn't have mixed feelings about Trump's money or the money Trump can raise. Supposedly has been always the hero of business in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and free trade and everything like that. Yeah. So I would expect that he'd be coming out gangbusters saying this is bad for Wisconsin and we want to keep those jobs here, Mr. President. You mean he's not putting out press releases saying that?
He's saying he doesn't like tariffs. That's what he said.
Oh, okay.
So he wants to do away with tariffs altogether. Real principled statement.
And I'm sure he's going to call him out when he's here visiting him, getting checks written for his campaign.
Well, he could have called him up before he arrived.
Yeah, I suppose so. Or he could have told him not to show up.
Right. And to say you're against tariffs, period. Well, then how come you're down with your Republican president who's threatening one of your core industries in your state?
Yeah.
Of course, he's bringing in Foxconn, the same company where we have suicide nets set up in China, because that's going to be an engine of jobs.
It's almost as if you're calling out Scott Walker for being unprincipled and taking advantage of a certain situation.
No. Oh, what? Me?
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Okay.
Okay.
All
right.
I'm somewhat surprised.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we touched on, Harley Davidson announced due to the tariffs that Europe will put on Harley Davidson motorcycles that they're going to move jobs over to Europe to account for the bikes that they sell overseas so that they can avoid the penalties that will come to them if they manufacture those bikes here in Milwaukee or in the U.S. at other plants. And ship those bikes and export them. So
there ought to be a Harley rally against Trump outside there.
I don't know. I don't see that happening. But it would be kind of nice to see.
Right. But I think it's so telling that Walker, Walker's like, oh, I'm against tariffs, but, I still want the president's money. Mm-hmm. And let's see what Senator Baldwin said about it.
Yeah, why don't you tell us, Paul?
From her tweet, just like Trump, I support better trade deals, not trade wars. Tariffs against our trading partners in Europe do not fix our trade problems, and President Trump's haphazard approach on tariffs with our allies will hurt Wisconsin manufacturing and agricultural economy. So, yeah, I think that's what the governor of our state ought to be doing,
that seems like a very reasonable statement.
You don't just say
it's not even lambasting him and name calling him. It's actually a very reasoned approach.
But she names him.
Yes.
The governor of Wisconsin ought to be able to name, because it's not Hillary Clinton that's imposing the tariffs or creating this trade war. Right. It wasn't Barack Obama that was creating it. It wasn't George W. Bush. It wasn't Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
And it won't be, Joe Biden. I don't know. I don't think it will be, or whoever.
Yeah.
Oprah. The bottom line is there is one person doing this, and there is one person in Scott Walker benefiting from him.
From coming to town, raising money, and electioneering on behalf of the Wisconsin Republicans and this governor.
Yeah. So just, name him. I mean, Ron Johnson refused to name Trump, too.
I wouldn't hold your breath.
Okay. Well, I think it's time that Walker starts, saying what side he's on. Wisconsin needs to know.
Yeah, well, we shall see. On the other side of the fence, there's been news since our podcast last week. So we went over the Marquette poll numbers. At the time, there were 10 Democrats in the primary. Mm-hmm. So as I was editing the podcast for last week, 2 Democrats have dropped out.
Oh, okay.
Dana Walks has dropped out of the race, citing the
Is that the poll numbers. That was biased toward Republicans?
It was +3. It was +3 Republicans.
So, actually, in 6-point swing, probably.
Yeah, and as we touched on last week,
So Walker's ahead, or not ahead, but he has a +2 approval rating in that poll, so he probably has more like a -4 approval rating in reality.
I don't want to be overconfident about it. However, do we think that the makeup of the electorate come November, based on all evidence that we have today, will be +3 Republican? I don't think so. And that poll was 38% self-identified rural voters. They make up, 26% of the,
right. And it's
of the population?
+3 out of compared to the historical average.
Yeah.
Marquette's only been polling since 2012.
Right.
So they've been mostly in Republican years.
True.
Or at least even years.
Yeah. It's post-Obama elections.
Right. Well, the 2012.
But his initial election in 2008.
They got the Walker recall in. Right.
Yep.
They got 3 bad elections for Democrats, 1 good election for Democrats.
Right. And so the averages, you would say, are perhaps skewed.
You would think that, right. You'd think there'd be, if anything, +3 Democratic skew this year.
Yeah. Well, that's hopeful.
So,
yeah.
Well, right. In which case, Walker would be way underwater.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure he's way underwater, but I would suggest that he's probably not 2 points above water.
So Dana Walks, as he dropped out, he did, same day he endorsed Tony Evers for governor, who is the leading candidate today.
Captain Excitement.
Current head of the Department of Education in the state.
We've podcasted on him several times.
Yep.
And gotten almost 0 feedback about Tony Evers, but that's all right.
So in addition to Dana Walks, Andy Gronick, a local figure here in the Milwaukee area, also dropped out.
Who I'd never heard of until he decided to run for governor.
Yeah.
But still.
So he will no longer be a candidate.
He's endorsed Kelda Royce, right?
So there's 2 candidates who dropped out who've endorsed 2 different people.
Now, Kelda did very poorly in the Marquette poll. She got 2%.
She did. She did not do, I think, as well as expected.
I think it's safe to say that for all the people in the single digits, the margin of error is probably, it's probably more like 10%. Because as I recall in the poli-sci stats, when they say a margin of error, like in a head-to-head, it's usually, whatever it is. So in a large sample, it's maybe 3 or 4 percentage points. This is already a smaller sample. But they say when you get closer to the extremes, 0 or 100, the margin of error is actually much higher.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's why typically you want in a poll, I think you want to get it like around 1,100 people. If that's kind of your threshold for like plus 2-3%.
But even if you survey 1,100 people, if your
sample is shit, then that's not going to be accurate.
Or if you say 98% of the people want this and 2% want that, they say that the margin of error is considerably higher for both of them. There's like a 5 or 10 point margin of error, even with the large sample, when it's 98 to 2. In other words, it could be as low as, say, 88 to 12.
Yeah.
If it's so on the extremes.
Yeah.
And so all these Democratic candidates, all below single digits, I would argue that their margin of error is probably at least 5 or 10. What did Groenick get in the poll?
So Groenick had a 4% showing in the poll. So he got 4% of the vote.
Just like Malin Mitchell did.
Yeah, right. So I mean he was kind of just down in the mix of all the non-Evers candidates pretty much, Now that having been said, we had guys like Mike McCabe that actually had a pretty decent showing in the head-to-head against Walker, and not so much in the primary poll. But I don't know. Yeah, it is volatile.
7 in the
I think
primary poll.
Yeah, but again, the margin of error with the little sample was, it's all for the man.
There's a real chance McCabe could get this nomination, actually.
Which is troublesome if he's not going to raise any money. It means that there's going to be a lot of onus on other organizations to basically run ads on his behalf, and then he's going to have to answer to that, and he's going to have to kind of disown some of it because he's being the big the good government guy, and he's going to have to say like, yeah, I don't endorse super PACs and all this stuff, but it's like Walker's going to have $10 million, and if you're only going to raise a minimal amount of money, I mean, what have we talked about, a few $100,000 or something like that? I mean, that's just it's a non-starter. It's not going to work. And yeah, we all want a campaign finance reform, and we want there to be a more equitable system where people that deserve a chance have a shot. But that's not the system we live in. We operate in a system that depends on private campaign contributions.
Where do you see this going long game? Who's going to be viable?
Well, there is no long game. We're 7 weeks out, Paul, to the primary.
To the general election. One of them is going to be the nominee.
Yeah.
What do you think their prospects against Walker are?
I still think they're pretty good because I don't think it's going to be a plus 3% electorate plus 3% Republican electorate.
Yeah, so it looks like things are moving very clearly into, say, Tammy Baldwin's direction.
Yeah, I think she's shoring up her support and is looking like more and more of a lock.
Right.
Because there's a pretty brutal primary between Leah Vukmir and Kevin Nicholson for the
lock, but just because
you can never say you can never say a lock
in 2016,
but she's looking pretty safe. I think they were hoping that she would be a lot more vulnerable than she's proven to be at this point.
Big ad campaign.
Yeah.
Really effective ad campaign.
I've said it from the beginning that I think Tammy Baldwin is probably one of the most underestimated politicians in the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
She has always exceeded expectations in every race she's run.
Well, she's the highest ranking Democrat there is right now in the state.
Yep.
So I think that, and deservedly so, I would argue. I think that you're going to have, the Democrats are not going to have that same, obviously, advantage running for governor.
Right.
They have. I mean,
it's the power. There's also the power of incumbency that you have to. Right. That goes along with.
So I would argue the governor's race is not going to exactly quite go our way. I do think, though, given the atmosphere, it could still be pretty close.
I would expect it to be close. Regardless,
I think it would be closer even than the last few where he won by about 6 or 7 points, 5, 6, 7 points. I think it be within 2 or 3 percentage points, and I think that leaves a pretty good chance that a Democrat could win if they can turn out the base.
That's key.
So that's where I'm still going to say Mahlon Mitchell's the most electable because of that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's pretty much, people's opinions are pretty hardened. It's safe to say Walker's going to get 47 or 48% of the vote minimum.
Well, it seems to kind of be his. I mean, he had a 49% approval rating in the Marquette poll, and if you're going to say it's +3 Republican, so maybe that's close.
I think Walker probably gets 49% of the vote. It's a question of easy, and can a Democrat turn out enough people that his number of voters basically doesn't quite reach 50% +1?
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a tight one.
It is. It may go deep into the night.
I would argue. Well, I hope it doesn't help the Democrat wins clearly.
Well, of course.
I would argue that Walker should be expected to retain every vote he got in 2014. So he should be expected to receive about 1,260,000 votes.
So then the turnout needs to be higher.
1,260,000 votes. If a Democrat,
but some of those people, but Paul, some of those people have died since then. So.
Yes, and they've had some of them have right-wing kids under 18.
True.
But
if you look at the electorate, the people that are becoming voting age, you wouldn't expect to be.
In Wisconsin, the exit polls showed that 18 to 24 broke for Trump. I don't know. I'm just saying, don't count our chickens now. Maybe now a lot of them will vote. Period.
Well, let's hope.
But I think 1,260,000. I think we should just count on him getting that many votes. If a Democrat can top that, they're probably going to be governor.
Yeah.
So I hope your win numbers, Democrats, are high.
Yeah.
Because no Democrat in the state's history has ever received more than 1,160,000 votes, which is what Jim Doyle did in 2006. And I think Tom Barrett actually got almost the same amount.
That was 12 years ago. That's raw numbers. So we've had population increase since then. So you can't just look at raw.
It's slight, but yeah, some. And Tom Barrett actually got almost the same exact amount as Doyle did that time. However, Walker had uber turnout in the recall. This is in the recall. 1,340,000, which was more than McCain got for the Republican standard bearer in the previous presidential election to that recall, and almost as much as about 95% of the total that Donald Trump received when he won the state 2 years ago.
So speaking of elections,
as well as Romney, the same thing.
So it is actually an election night in some parts of the country tonight. There's primary elections in places like Utah, South Carolina. New York's got some primaries on the congressional side. So just a few interesting things to note. So we've got Mitt Romney running away with the Republican vote in Utah. What did he get, like 70% of the vote, I think? 76%. So he's pretty much a shoo-in to be the next senator from Utah. So we'll see what that looks like. I don't know.
Well, Tony Evers of the Republican Party. No, sort of.
Well, yeah, right.
Captain Excitement.
The governor's race in South Carolina, there was a primary there. Harry McMaster locked it up. Trump took a trip down to South Carolina, gave a bombastic speech last night endorsing Harry McMaster. He pulled it out, I think, by about 10 points. New York, I think, on the Democratic side was the most notable race tonight. Representative Joe Crowley, longtime Democrat, is kind of one of the more senior House members on the Democratic side. He lost to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And it wasn't even close. She was an organizer for Bernie Sanders in 2016. She won by, I think, with the article I saw, it was about 88% reporting a little while ago, and she was ahead 57.6 to 42.4. So, pretty resounding victory for her. So if you're going to prognosticate about what that means, well, that shows a very motivated Democratic base that's coming out to vote. And it sounds like Joe Crowley, like he wasn't like a centrist necessarily, but he represented kind of the old guard of the Democratic Party, obviously you have an up and coming activist in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who garnered a lot of support.
Oh, it's right by LaGuardia.
Okay.
LaGuardia, it includes LaGuardia Airport. So it's in the Queens, and then I guess it looks like it does include parts of the Bronx.
Okay.
The sort of northeast Bronx area near. Trying to see what the bay is there, but anyway, so basically,
it's in the city. It's in the metro area.
City. Yep. He's gone.
Yeah, and I mean there were people that were talking about Crowley being a potential successor to Nancy Pelosi.
Well, no longer.
Not gonna happen.
Not gonna do it.
So,
that wouldn't be prudent.
Yeah. So it's just an interesting result. We'll see what it means. I would expect that she'd be the favorite to retain this district for the Democrats.
Here is the real Donald Trump tweet about it. Wow, big Trump hater Congressman Joe Crowley, who many expected was going to take Nancy Pelosi's place, just lost his primary election. In other words, he's out. That is a big one that nobody saw happening. Perhaps he should have been nicer and more respectful to his president.
Right, because that's the lesson. That's the lesson from this vote.
Yeah,
is
that's
that,
what people in the Queens and the Bronx
right.
are looking for, somebody more pro-Trump.
If Joe Crowley was a more pro-Trump Democrat, I'm sure he would have. I'm sure that result would have been a flip of what the actual result was.
Right.
I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, well, that's the real Donald Trump there.
He definitely had a good week at the Supreme Court. A number of Supreme Court rulings that did not go the way we had hoped, I would say.
Yeah, that was
the most
serious.
The most notable one today was the travel ban was upheld. Now, that was the modified travel ban. I think it was their third attempt at making it constitutional. Mm-hmm. Which means that they dialed back on the number of countries that were included. They threw in places like North Korea, and to try to make it not just a Muslim ban. You factor that in. But we have all the statements out there, like the arguments that this was not intended to be a Muslim ban. We have all the campaign statements. We have all the press releases, all those things. It was very clear what their intent was. Mm-hmm. So the fact that wasn't taken into account, that was just ignored, is pretty shameful, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think the SCOTUS is not our friend. The Supreme Court is not our friend. Tomorrow they will probably issue a very bad ruling against Labor in the Janus decision, which will be seen as a victory for worker freedom, which really is just a victory for free riders. So you don't want to pay their fair share if they're benefiting from a union contract.
So you don't think Anthony Kennedy is going to use that case to stand out? Because
that would be a shocker.
I mean, it's all the stuff about Anthony Kennedy is going to be he's going to be the saving grace. I mean, he hasn't done anything. Yeah, right. At least since the gay marriage ruling. I mean, Anthony Kennedy hasn't done jack shit.
Right.
So the fear is now that he's going to retire and be replaced with another Neil Gorsuch.
Right.
So. We shall see, but this just goes back to people. I mean, the elections have consequences. Mm-hmm. For all the people that thought that there wouldn't be a difference between Clinton and Trump, or who voted for Jill Stein. I mean, give me a break. I mean, the Supreme Court would look much different right now, and these rulings would be much different. So if you don't like the travel ban, if you are supportive of labor laws, if you don't think American Express should be able to be able to manipulate all the retailers that use them, and
exactly.
This is the thing. You have to get out and vote. Otherwise, this is what happens.
Well, and speaking of getting out and voting, I hate to say this, but looking at the raw numbers on New York primaries, so in the Crowley race that he lost, he got 11,761 votes in the primary to 15,897.
Yeah.
Total 27,658 votes.
Yeah.
So, congressional district.
Yeah, I would want to compare that to the Republican primary.
Yeah, fine, but a congressional district, I don't think they probably had one because of the safety.
You don't think they're even going to contest it?
Not in the 14th, probably.
Well, that may be why there wasn't more voters then.
Well, it's a primary, right? So there's a real choice. I mean, that's what we would have in the state senate race here. This is a congressional seat, which is like 4 Wisconsin state senate races.
Sure.
Seats, and that's what we'd have in a primary.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really low turnout.
Yeah.
I mean, there's about 500,000 eligible voters in a congressional seat. So that's a 5% turnout.
But I would say that if it's a solidly Democratic district, it was really motivated people that wanted to go out and vote against Joe Crowley, and there were probably a lot of people that are used to voting for Joe Crowley on the ballot. They were just like, "Well, I'll vote for him in November. We're fine." You know?
Yeah, I guess.
I don't know. I wouldn't read too much into that. So
I don't know. I think it's. I'll have to see more, but those look like really bad.
Just in the raw numbers? Yeah, I don't disagree.
So I think that there may be something to the case that some of the energy out of the blue wave has really started to dissipate.
Well, hopefully after all the crazy stuff this past couple of weeks, maybe that the White House insanity check. Yeah. I hope. I'm just saying that, like, just looking at the numbers, it doesn't look that good. Yeah. But I don't know how much I would read into that, given the fact that it's a pretty solid district. So.
Yeah. I'm just looking at the rest of these primaries. They're not much more impressive. Yeah. Maybe just nobody votes in New York State primaries, which seems just bizarre to me because
right, because you figure it's a more.
If I was running Crowley's campaign, I would have found a way to get another 5,000 votes. It's almost inconceivable that he couldn't have. It's a U.S. House seat.
Yeah, that's on him. Obviously, maybe he got lazy.
Well, I just think that our targeting might be just so narrow now that we think we're so clever that we're just talking to just the reliable voters.
Yeah.
But maybe it's about time we start trying to expand the pool a little bit. 5% turnout in a primary?
Pretty non-impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's for the majority party in that seat. Yeah. And so, if that's... it just shows that people aren't that motivated to vote.
Well, at least I don't know.
The Democratic voters aren't that motivated, frankly.
I don't think you can extrapolate from that one race.
All the other ones in New York State are really low too, and it makes you just wonder, like, do people just think in a blue state like that voting is somebody else's responsibility?
Right,
maybe?
they're just kind of taking it for granted.
That might explain sort of why we're in the problem we're in.
Perhaps.
Is that what happens in blue areas in Wisconsin? I don't know. It's just something to think about.
Yeah. So with that, that's kind of where things stand. So interesting news this week. Trump will be in town tomorrow, so we'll see what news comes out of that on our next episode. Stay tuned, everybody. Forward.
With that, forward.